This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Everyone, RTV Sports Wrap back now in the month of November. Spencer Byers alongside me, Cajun Theroux, Thaney Castle, Michael Harris, and JC Coots. Guys, so happy to have you back. And man, am I happy to have an RTV Sports Wrap after the Toronto Blue Jays lose the World Series. Oh, what a time to be alive. I had Cajun texting me about them going to win. I had you guys on the show trying to tell me, oh, the Jays are going to win it. The Jays are going to pull it out. And they had it. Up 4-3, bottom of the ninth, or top of the ninth. Jeff Hoffman on the mound, 1 out, and then Miguel Rojas ties it with a home run, and then bases juiced. The Jays don't score. Bases juiced. The Dodgers don't score. Who's going to win? The Dodgers are going to win because they spend $350 million, and Will Smith, one of the best catchers in baseball, hits one over the left field fence and ends it 5-4 in favor of the most expensive team in the world, at least in baseball terms. So I'll go now to you, JC. I was there the day after the World Series at the Bayshore for our 2:00 game against Erie. I knew the vibe was down from all the people that were Blue Jays fans, excluding me, because I was pretty high temper. I felt pretty good about on that day. It was a nice night for me. What was it like for you now, having a chance to stew on it a little bit, having a chance to maybe get a chance to review and not be as emotional as just day after a really gut-wrenching loss?
Well, I mean, in all fairness, Spencer, I only really had 12 hours to process it. You've had like 3 weeks since the Yankees got knocked out in the ALDS, so you've obviously had a little bit more time to deal with things. But
the shots are going to be fired. Damn.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to sit here and take abuse from a Yankees fan? What would you rather?
Out of everybody, a Stankies fan? That's crazy.
I take it Spencer's more happy, more proud about losing in an ALDS in Game 7 of a World Series in extra innings, which will go down in history as one of the greatest World Series ever played. But if that's what you're happy with, that's fine. I mean, some people like obscurity. It always gives you something to try for again next year. What
am I, a Leafs fan? Whoa, JC, before you get away with that, you cheer for the Ottawa Senators. You want to talk about obscurity. You want to talk about mediocrity. I mean, let's be honest here, okay? We're not talking about the team that's won, 28 championships right now? That's not the mediocrity team. But again, JC,
28.
Your emotions. Was it 27?
You don't even know when you're a Yankees fan. Come on,
we won
bro.
so many, it's hard to count. You run out of fingers. I had to use toes.
The original buy a title team, and you started this episode by complaining about the Dodgers buying a title. Like,
I just stated a fact. If they spend $350 million and are going to spend more money this summer, because we all know they're going to. I don't know who they're going to sign, but it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Kyle Tucker.
You think Tucker? I mean, there's a lot of opt-outs, though. We'll get into that in a second. But, JC, I'll let you finish. Again, you mentioned it. In a gut-wrenching loss to the Dodgers in the 11th inning of Game 7.
Yeah, but I mean, again, a team that last year was dead last, and this year came within 2 outs of being World Series champions. There were a lot of things to break your heart in this series, but that's what sports is. It's something that breaks your heart, but it also makes you love it. And one of the things that I appreciate most about this run is how many new fans we now have for the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, in 92, 93, that first few years after, they built a huge following in Canada. A lot of the guys that you see now who are Canadian in Major League Baseball were either just kids after having the Jays won and their parents being like, you should play baseball because it's awesome. Yeah. You could be a Toronto Blue Jay someday. We're starting to see that effect. Same as a result of the Toronto Raptors coming to Canada and now having won a championship. I mean, Canadian basketball is going through the roof as a result of that championship run. It was about time that baseball had a bit of a revival. I think it was desperately needed. And it's incredible just talking to people about baseball who I never would have thought would be baseball fans. Today I was talking to a colleague whose daughter is not a sports fan at all, but she turned to him during Game 7 and say, I get why people like sports now. That's just the effect it's had. And look at the numbers we're getting in the viewership numbers. 11 million people watch Game 7. That's about a third of the Canadian population. I mean, there have only been a few moments in Canadian history where that many people were watching the same thing in this country. One of them was when Sid scored the golden goal. Another was when the Tragically Hip played their last concert in Kingston. Like, this is a nation unifying thing. It would be even greater, I think, had they won, but even though they didn't, I think that's okay. They walk away with the hearts of an entire country, which they didn't have before. And it's going to have a great effect. Think about the Vancouver Canadians now, who produced Trey Savage. He was not there for long earlier this season, but he was there. I mean, they're going to see a big spike in their attendance. You'll probably see a huge ripple effect. And now, as a result of the word getting around about what a great atmosphere this team was and how much fun it was to play here, I think all of a sudden it kind of becomes an appealing destination for future free agents. So even though they didn't win, there's going to be a lot of huge positives to move forward, and it really does put baseball in Canada back on the map again.
Now, again, I was mostly joking at the beginning because, as JC mentioned, there's so many angles we can talk about with this story, and there are. Like, I think a big one was, you mentioned that 14 million, I think it was peak 14 million, averaged 11 million viewers here in Canada, 26 million for the American viewers to watch the World Series between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays there in Game 7, which, again, continues a good thing for baseball, which is a sport we've talked about is declining in viewership and is trying to find ways to market to the new viewer. And you heard Rob Manfred mention during the World Series that, hey, we are interested in expanding into Canada, not only with the Montreal Expos, but Vancouver also is a destination we're looking at to put a baseball team in. So the MLB is also noticing that Canada does love baseball. Now, it does take having a good baseball team. That always helps, but, they do love baseball. And JC, the last thing I want to mention before I let you take over, Michael, is you mentioned, obviously, them not having a great year last year, and they had a bad start this year. They were a middling team again, and everyone expected, as you did, before we had the summer break, that this team was not going to be anything special, as they had not shown us previous. And I think that sometimes it shows that patience does win. Now, obviously, you have to adapt and you have to change eventually, but the plan by Atkins and Shapiro has worked out, surprisingly, almost miraculously, but yet the patience worked out. The sticking to the plan worked out. And some people, are willing to go down with the ship. I think those two guys were, and for them, luckily, they missed the iceberg, and now they have a chance to say they built a World Series contending roster, which none of us would have expected if you asked us back in April, back in March, or, what have you, when the team was still battling for like third place in the AL East at that point. Now, Michael, what were your feelings, obviously, watching that heartbreaking Game 7 loss?
Yeah, that is a great way to describe it. So I was at the Attack game on Saturday night, and I stuck around with my son and a couple of his friends, and we watched, they stayed for the whole game down at the Bay Shore, and that was really great for the Attack to do and for the City of Owen Sound to do, because the screen's really good quality there at the Bay Shore on the clock. So that was kind of neat for the, I'll say, 150 people that stuck around to watch. And yeah, so talk about a roller coaster. And JC mentioned it. That result is both what is heartbreaking about sport, but it's also why we love sport. And it's hard to have the two wrapped into one almost as perfectly as that Game 7 was. You're going into the ninth inning thinking, yes, here we go. And then I feel bad. I feel bad for Hoffman. What was the knock on him in the regular season as a closer? Gives up too many home runs. And then he gives up a home run. If you look at his record throughout the postseason, he was spectacular. It's just in that moment, Miguel Rojas, as you said, got him. And it wasn't Ohtani, right? Like, there's another thing it took Miguel Rojas to save the Dodgers dynasty. It wasn't Mookie Betts. It wasn't Shohei Ohtani in that moment. It was actually kind of more like a Blue Jays type story with, you think of the Barges and the Clements and Miles Straws and Nathan Lucases that brought them through the playoffs. In that moment, it was the ninth hitter that actually brought the Dodgers back into it. So if you separate the Blue Jays fan from it, that's actually a pretty spectacular thing that, again, sort of an unsung guy saved and brought this dynasty forward. They're not being talked about necessarily as a dynasty if it isn't for their number 9 batter, not Ohtani, not Betts, not Freeman. Of course, Will Smith, they all had their moments, but it was just another example of how it takes everyone on a team to contribute in order to have success. And that's what we preached about the Blue Jays, this whole run. And when they got, you said it, Spencer, they had to take off the latter half of the season to get first place and all of that. So I've come around to the rational part of things where I can enjoy what the Blue Jays did. The heartbreak has subsided. And again, JC mentioned it. My daughter was away at university having watch parties with her friends who were not Blue Jays fans. That got my wife involved because my daughter's texting the family group chat. Are you guys watching this? This is incredible. Right. And so I just love what it did for a sport that I'm already a big fan of. You need that. 2015 kind of jump-started it for my son's age group. A lot of kids started playing baseball, and this will kick it into high gear even more. I love things that bring us together as people, as sports fans. It brought people. I do believe it was a galvanizing thing for Canada and sports fans and not friends of sports fans. So overall, what a great experience. Maybe we'll get into it a bit later, the sustainability of this Blue Jays team, and can they do it again next year? I'm worried about, but right now I'm just trying to relish in the run that it was.
We definitely will get into if Bo Bichette returns. How sustainable or how realistic is it that this Jays team could repeat or even get close to what they did this year, which was a division title win, as well as maybe a World Series or at least ALCS berth. Now, Cajun, before I get to you, who obviously was there at the Rogers Center, we've spoken throughout these shows about you working for MLSC and having a chance to be at the Rogers Center for not only the watch parties, but also for the games. But before I get into that, I do want to mention one more thing with the Jays, which is, as we talked about with the heart-wrenching loss and all the things that go into that and the galvanizing thing here in Owen Sound, Michael, the Owen Sound Bay Sox, our local, I'll say our local baseball team and their local organization with all the lower levels, they've won the Northern Dufferin Baseball League last year. They were in the final this year. So we have, a really good baseball club here in Owen Sound. Now, obviously a much different level, but, baseball is growing in this area too, not just globally, not just, nationally. It's growing locally as well, which is also a great sight to see because I'll say, Michael, for us, usually it's lacrosse. We do a bunch of lacrosse broadcasts. Right. Rogers formerly. Lacrosse is a big part of the Grey County area, all the way to Durham, all the way here. Baseball, it's nice to see baseball getting a chance to get some shine here in Grey County and here in Owen Sound with the Bay Sox and their organizations and their battle for the Bay U11 championships they've had the last 2 years here in Owen Sound down at Balmy Beach, I believe. Now, Cajun, I will get to you. You were there in Toronto. You were there at the Rogers Center. What was the feeling like in the building when Rojas ties it and then Will Smith wins it?
When Rojas tied it, you kind of just felt the air let out. Like you had that feeling of doom. Like once that game was tied, it was just only a matter of when the other shoe was going to drop.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of Jays fans who just couldn't move out their seats. But with me looking at throughout from the beginning of the season to the end, couldn't help but feel proud. Because this was a team, betting odds wise, their over under on wins was 78.5.
Right.
No expectations for this team. A lot of people had them projected to finish 4th or 5th in the AL East. And then a lot of them had the Yankees favored over the Jays in the ALDS. Why, I will never know. And even in the World Series, when there were predictions of Dodgers in 4, Dodgers in 5. Spencer, I'm not going to let you slide over that bogus Dodgers in 4 prediction because that broom got broken after game 1. But I think what was so enjoyable about this team was just Vladdy proved that he could elevate his game in the postseason. Springer could too. But it was also the other guys who you wouldn't expect to at the beginning of the year. Ernie Clement now can say he has the record for most hits in a postseason. Addison Barger had a coming out party. Andres Jimenez, the 9-hitter, saved them against the Mariners in Game 3 and Game 4.
Yeah.
When their backs were against the wall. Guys like Miles Straw and IKF had their moments. And even Bo coming back in that World Series, you could tell he clearly was not 100%. And then had it not been for Rojas's heroics in the 9th inning, you could argue Bo Bichette was the hero of Game 7 with that 3-run shot. So, and the fact that they took that Dodgers team with as much starting pitching as they had, and with that lineup to the ultimate brink. I think there's a ton you can ride off on from there. And I think this could, and I genuinely believe this will last because of the hitting philosophy that they have. Contact, put the ball in play. The line moving, next man up. Because that was led by Vladdy too, because sure, he was the go-to guy and the leader of that team, but he wouldn't care about taking a walk as long as somebody else behind him got the job done too. And I think what could make this last is that you could tell a lot. It's always a cliche that with a championship team, they genuinely like each other. But that was the case with this Jays team. They genuinely liked each other, and you didn't really see any egos in that clubhouse. Now, can they replicate that next season is up for debate, and it depends on who they bring back, because it's safe to say not all of those free agents are going to come back. But there's a culture in place, and based off of this playoff run, other players are going to look at this and say, we want to be a part of this. So I think this could last, even though in baseball it's really hard to get back to that point. The Dodgers make it look easy, but in baseball it's really hard to get back to the World Series like that. Now, I think they're going to be a really good team next season, but you still got the Mariners, the Tigers, depending on what they do with Scuba. I don't know what the hell going on with that. You still got the Red Sox. You still got the Yankees. So it's going to be a tough road getting back to that point, but they do have the tools to get back there. But they do need one or two starting pitchers, because that starting pitching is kind of aging. Although having Trey Savage have his coming out party during the postseason is a big plus.
Now, a couple things I want to mention before I ask JC and Michael if you guys think this is sustainable, and then we could talk about, who they should bring back. Should they go after a guy like Bregman or Tucker or whomever you think, who opted out and is now a free agent going into this summer, or this winter, I should say. First off, Caleb Joseph, Sportsnet analyst, who said that the Jays were the better team. I think that's a naive take, just because, again, I think saying the better team didn't win a World Series or winning a championship series, I think is a little bit unjust. I understand you can say that at times the Jays outplayed the Dodgers, which they did. You go to Game 7 in the 11th inning in Game 7 and play an 18-inning game in one of the other games that you ended up not pulling out either, because you're a good baseball team and because you had your moments where you were the better side. But the Dodgers' talent and the Dodgers' money, as we've spoken about, won out, which is what it's supposed to do. The reason why you pay $350 million is not to be the Mets sitting at home watching the whole playoff. It's to be at the World Series and get a chance to win a championship, which they've now done twice in a row. And I know the Ohtani quotes of, we want to win a third one, I can't wait to win a third one, kind of thing, which I thought was kind of interesting from his perspective. Now, Michael, I do want to go to you. Bo Bichette's a free agent. I believe Max Scherzer's a free agent now. He wants to pitch next year from what it sounds like from his comments. Chris Bassett's a free agent. Gold Glover Ty France is a free agent. How many of these guys do you want to bring back? And then we can look later at free agency. But of the guys on the Jays roster currently that are out of contract, how many of them do you want to bring back? How many of them do you see coming back to this current Jays squad?
I want Bo Bichette. you have to bring back Bo Bichette. You say you have to. If it doesn't happen, they'll figure out a way. First of all, I have no confidence in Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins. I think they fumbled all over themselves into a World Series Game 7, and maybe I'm being a pessimist and not fair to them. But Santander, their big offseason I know he got hurt, but he didn't do anything. So then all of a sudden you have to replace him, luckily, with Nathan Lucas, who's a 10-year minor league player. I would bring back Bassett and Bichette. Those are the only two that I'm interested in keeping as free agents in the list that you mentioned. Bassett, I think he starts the year as a starter, and then if you're able to get people throughout the season, maybe he goes to the bullpen. But I like Bassett. What's going on with Barrios? Like, is he healthy? Is he hurt? There's just so many questions going into next year. But if they could go out and get a guy like Skubal somehow, they have to. What they've proven is they have to swing for the fences, right? As we all talked about, the fervor that they whipped up in the country, in the fan base. If they don't do everything that they can to keep, especially Bo Bichette, and then to go add to this group with some other marquee free agents, then they're doing their fans a disservice. The fans deserve it. They came out, they supported, they bought jerseys and hats and paid thousands of dollars for seats and all of that sort of stuff. So do what you have to do to keep Bo Bichette, go get somebody else, and really give your fans something to be excited about right from day one.
The other thing I do want to mention before I go to you, JC, on any free agents you want to see. I know Schwarber's now a free agent. Obviously, Tucker's a free agent. Bregman's a free agent. I think those are the really big fish. I think there's some pitchers also that are going to be hitting the FA market this upcoming winter.
I think it's pitchers, Spencer. I think positionally they're pretty good. I think it's pitchers they need to look at.
I was going to say I like Bregman with the Jays just because I think Springer is about a 100-game player now. I think the injuries have just taken too much of a toll. And I think one more really good bat that you can supplement somewhere in, if you find a position for him, or if you just DH him, and find a position somewhere else for somebody else, if that's Barger playing the field or what have you, that's kind of been my mock. But, before we get into that, one other thing I do want to mention, and I've been trying to find a way to implement this, anyone, and I hope no one watching this does this, who messages players after a gut-wrenching loss and sends them threats, you are despicable and you have no right in sports, period, full stop. I can't say that enough. Didn't matter how old I was, I've never in my life watched a game that my team lost, and I watched the Niners lose 3 Super Bowls. I've never thought I'm going to send a message, a DM, a public message of a threat to a player. Never. And I didn't like players. Obviously, we all have players we don't like on our favorite teams, on other teams, for doing dirty things, for just doing things we don't like, for not playing well, for capitulating in big moments. We all have players we don't like, athletes we don't particularly like, but we don't send them direct messages saying horrible, despicable things about them and their families. You're wrong. Do not do that. I hope Isaiah Connor-Falefa does not take it to heart, because I think most Jays fans are just elated they got this far and are not that mad about a lead that he didn't take, that I've now heard from Whit Merrifield was the right thing to do because that's what he got told to do by the third base coach. But anyway, JC, Bo Bichette a free agent, Max Scherzer a free agent, Chris Bassett a free agent. I see Sir Anthony Dominguez, is also a free agent, among others. Anyone you really want to keep? I think Bo's the big one.
Yeah, he is. And believe it or not, I actually think that losing the World Series increased the Jays' chances of keeping Bo Bichette, simply because it's unfinished business here. He and Vladdy have said for a long time, because they've essentially come up together through the system of the Blue Jays organization together. They've said that they want to win a World Series together. So I think that, based on being that close to success, also the fact that he wasn't able to give 100%, he wants a chance to do it again when he's 100%. I think that might help him stay. I think obviously the Blue Jays side of the business of Rogers, the big telecommunications company that this show runs on their TV network. Thanks for having us, guys. Obviously, they might want to, or they have made some money this year. So all of a sudden, it kind of makes sense to open up the wallet a little bit. There are going to be bidders, but I think that Bo will want to stick around because this group genuinely did like each other and probably believes that they can make another run for it again next year. That said, there are going to be some departures. Bassett, I think, based on some of the post-game interviews he did, is probably going to want to stick around. There might be some money out there for sure, but if it's a starting pitcher role, he'll stay. He all of a sudden looked like a beautiful setup man in the role that the Jays used him in the playoffs. But as long as they're willing to offer him a starting role, I think he wants to stick around. I think that probably some of the new arrivals, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Ty France, they're probably checking out. France just won a Gold Glove. He's a first baseman. That's a ton of it. That job's kind of taken for the next 13 years or however long Vladdy signed for. So I think he's likely to walk. Shane Bieber's an interesting one. He does it's a player option. So if he decides to stay, $16 million is a bargain for what he can potentially do if he fully regains his form heading into next season. But again, I think he probably got a taste of what Toronto was like and probably liked it. So there might be some talk of an extension happening during the off season, I would guess. And yeah, I think that they're probably going to keep a few. I think Mad Max is probably sticking around based on what he said. I think he's got a little bit left in the tank. Maybe he'll go in the off season and try to learn the knuckleball. That'll really extend his career. But in the meantime, I think he might be somebody the Blue Jays would extend an offer to come back just because of who he is. And that said, when you're looking at free agency, I think you're looking for a few different things this time around. I don't think you're just looking for the best player to sign. I think you're looking for the best player who's also really, really good in the clubhouse. Yeah. Because they want to keep this going. That's what made them successful. So I think all of a sudden a guy like John Schneider is probably going to be a little bit of a larger part of the process of free agency in determining whether or not guys are a good fit in the clubhouse and will get into this system and be part of the family that the Jays have created. Because you don't just want to sign somebody for numbers. That's not who this team is. So I think that it's going to be a little bit of a different approach to the offseason. Plus, you also have to remember, some guys earned jobs this year. Like Ernie Clement is sticking around. Davis Snyder might be a guy. Lucas might be a guy that sticks around. So you've got a case because you already know they're good in the clubhouse. You're probably going to keep them, and there's going to be some promotions as well next year.
Little under a minute. Jason, I'm going to start with you. Let's just go rapid fire. Of the free agents you've heard of, Ranger Suarez, Pete Alonso, among others, who do you want to see in a Blue Jays uniform next year that is not currently a Blue Jay now? JC, I'll start with you.
Sure. Who would I want to see that's not currently a Blue Jay? Don't know, man. Like I said, it's going to depend on whether or not they're great in the clubhouse.
What about you, Cajun? If you could just say money was no object, one player not on the Jays currently that's going to be a free agent, who would you want to add? We got him. Finally. The unmute button again takes another casualty.
Ranger Suarez.
Ranger Suarez, that's a great pick. Michael, what about you?
They need a lefty to offset all those righties.
And he's a really good one.
I'm going to say I don't have a name for you, but what I'm going to say is they need to go after a starting pitcher. It's got to be a high-end 2 or 3 starting pitcher.
For Spencer Byers, Michael Harris, Cajun Ruth, Danny Castleman, Michael Harris. We'll see you next week. RTV Sports Wrap.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
With Rogers TV, you can cheer on the home team from the comfort of your living room. We'll head to the rink, the field, the court, or the pitch, so you don't have to. Tune in and cheer on your local amateur athletes on Rogers TV.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm so happy to have these prosthetic legs. I wear them every day so I can do all the things I love to do. I like to hike, skate, and do gymnastics.